Hi everyone. Over the years, I've seen many discussion when it came to Usenet providers, when it comes to performance and what NZB is available, the difference between the many providers, the difference when it comes to backbones. And I had the exact same questions, and I was looking for some benchmark or some test when it comes to uh, compares those providers and backbones, and I didn't find much. So I decided to took it upon myself to do a test, and today's video is exactly that. So what I did is I tested 71 identical NZB on 8 providers and 7 backbones. So real quick, make sure to check the video description and channel for updates. I'm not used to make this kind of content, so I might make mistakes, of course, and I will try my best to correct them in the comments, or I might upload a second video with more information. Uh, Real quick, so I do not work with any providers and dexers. I'm just a random guy that wants to do this test. Uh, I have no affiliation with anybody when it comes to this. Uh, Everything was paid by me out of pocket, and I did not want warn the providers that I will be doing this. Uh, Another note is I'm not an expert in Usenet or this kind of testing benchmarks. There will be mistakes. I want to be clear about that. And hopefully, I inspire people, much smarter people, to do better testing than me. Yes, this will be vague and result will be anonymized. There's many good reason as to why I will be doing both of those things. I will not go into details right now, but trust me, it makes sense. And this video is not meant for new Usenet users. As I'm saying, I'm not an expert. This is very light testing. There's a lot of subcontext that will need explaining, and I won't do it in this video. So if you're a new Usenet user and you watch this video, do not jump to your own conclusion. Uh, yeah, and the entire thing was done to satisfy my own curiosity. I did it for myself. It's far from perfect and full of personal bias, so this is very important. I wanted to list it my way. Of course, there's pros and cons, but I did what I did, and I felt like publishing the results. Here's my process. So I decided what I needed. This will be described in the next slide. I searched I searched indexers for the NZB corresponding to what I needed. I input the NZB into a downloading software only using the provider. So when I input into SAB NZB or NZB get, I only have one server active, well, one provider active. If that provider had many servers, then they will be all on. But if they had bonuses and stuff like that, I really focused on simply one provider, one backbone. Um, For the provider and backbone selection, I try to cover as wide as possible. Uh, there's 10-ish backbones depending on your definition and update. I got 8 providers on 7 backbone. I did not get the full coverage of backbones purely because of monetary reasons. It gets kind of expensive if you add much more. My dream would to have tested maybe 30 providers, but that's not happening. Um, but I selected providers to have a wide cover of the Usenet map. I did not go by popularity, but I tried to hit a few keynotes. Um, what I meant by that is I had some question about well, big providers, small providers, and I selected 8 providers that felt like it will really cover the range. Of course, I hit a few key ones. As I said, I'm not gonna mention them, but just know that they are there, and no obscure one. What I mean by that is I'm talking, for example, of if I did a Google research and I went on the 13 page and no, I stayed on the map and I picked, even some smaller ones, but they were still like public Usenet providers. Um, what I was looking for when I picked the NZB. So as I said, I decided what I needed, and this is the process that I will explain here. It's important that you understand this process because it has a direct impact on the results, and it's full of bias. It's my own decision to how to test it. So patches frequency, as I said, there's 71, so the total is going to be 71. 51 full release and 20 weekly release. Cultural popularity, of course, this is extremely subjective, of my own bias for sure, but I went with 13, which were highly popular, 24 medium, and 34, which is low popularity. As a rule of thumb, high is everybody you know gets this. Medium is some people you will know gets this, and this is, overall. Uh, if you heard of it, you heard of it, and maybe you liked it, maybe you didn't, but it's not hugely popular, or maybe it was briefly popular over some time ago, but it faded out. Uh, the release date. Now, this is not the age of the NZB. This is the release date. I went with fairly to the left. This is old. This is new. And I went to the left, but not so much. I tried to stay in normal range. And the size of the NZB, the total download, uh, the very high, it should have been like maximum. Uh, the size can be high too, and it can be normal. I did it that way. The way I selected, you can see, of course, it's my own personal decision, but I had no interest to check like very popular and very recent stuff. To me, that will just be the easiest to get. So I really tried to make a mix. Things I did not consider: the language. Everything is in English. Yes, despite my accent, I went with 100% English. It's for the general public. And I did not consider the age of the NZB. This one is important. Again, it's a personal decision. It's a bias, of course, of this results. Uh, I personally do not care much about retention and this kind of thing. What I care about is having what I want. And that's the way I went forward with this. I decided what I want, and then I picked the NZB to get what I want. Uh, Real quick, of course, I didn't select NZB with age outside of my provider's retention. That to me doesn't really isn't really relevant uh, as a test. I just the test for me was to see, do I get what I need if I'm on one provider or the other. So the median is 500 days. I'm heavy on the under 1,000. I'm not going to be specific here because I'm trying to hide which providers I went to, but of course it's a bit lighter on the newer side of things, but still, um, I I selected to get what I want. The result, uh, this is a broader spectrum than what people normally choose. Uh, of course, this is me guessing. This I assume if you're watching this, or like the majority of people watching this are not gonna focus on very low popular, like very low popular things that were released a long time ago. Maybe you have like a few niche personal things that you like, but overall, I think if I compare to, like, for example, my habits, it's much more on this side. And of course, the NZB here, this is much, much, much higher if you understand. You get it. If you've done some testing on your side, you get what I mean. And of course, here it's going to be much, much, much on this side. So what I'm trying to say is the selection I did is a wide spectrum. It's not really representative of the reality, but it's harder to get. Those NZB are harder to get for the providers, I think. That is my opinion. And approximately 650 gigs of total download per providers. Major point before I go to results. Sorry if this is kind of long. I need to go over this. Uh, of the 71 NZBs, 6 were not found on any providers. I've removed them from the graphs, so the new total is 65. Uh, so keep that in mind. The 65 is the real number. 71 NZB is an extremely small sample size. Please understand this. Um, do not jump to extreme conclusion. This is extremely small, and this is even smaller, of course. Um, the result are going to be slightly lower than what I think the average Usenet user will see on his side. First of all, because of what I've explained, it's a broader spectrum of NZBs. It's covering much more of the possibilities. And there's no backup block and fillers. And this is important that you understand this is, for example, you have a provider that downloads 99% of an NZB, and the missing 1% is going to be filled with a backup, a block, or a filler, or whatever, and that will result in a success. And you will never see it happen. But on my test, which is a very specific test, is that even if the provider went to 99% of the content of an NZB and it's missing only 1%, that will fail because that 1% cannot come from anything else. And this brings me to my next point is this isn't how you're supposed to use Usenet. Like the single provider and the manual selection is not how you're supposed to use Usenet. Uh, this is just for the sake of the test. And also, do not confuse the result with a typical. This is just a screenshot of SAB NZB. This is not the requested. Don't worry about this. You will have 96%. Do not confuse my result with this. As I said, when my providers look for an NZB and it downloads 99% of it, and the 1% fail, then it, that NZB is considered failed. But the reality is it got 99% of it, so you will get a 99% result. So just don't confuse this with this. And we're jumping into the result right away. So as you can see, real quick, I named the providers just a random letter, a sequential letter, and I've ranked them by performance. There's no int on how, like, oh, maybe the G is for. No, no, no. There's no int. This is completely random. So if we look at the results, we have, for example, provider A, I 65 NZB, and it resulted in 65 success, and so on and so forth. And I did the same graph. This is the same graph, but with percentage. Just maybe it's easier for you to understand the percentage. I have a few notes here I want to talk. Please understand that the accuracy of the test I did, 71 NZB or 65 NZB, whatever you want to see about it, is extremely small sample, and that means the accuracy is extremely wide. Like it's not a very good accurate. So for example, I'm just saying if I'd redo the test with completely different NZBs, maybe with the same criteria but different NZBs, maybe this provider, which would succeeded at taking 59 of them, will be number one, and this one will be switched around. So please understand that the accuracy, all of those, to me, they will all have the same results. That's my comprehension of these things. What you have to understand too is I'm talking maybe about the one on the lower hands. My selection of NZB were very specific, English content, uh, and so on and so forth. And maybe those providers are specialized in other kind of content. I choose a kind. There's many kind of available NZBs, so maybe that explains those lower results. Okay, I'm just putting out there that this isn't like uh, final results. There's a lot of subcontext. Uh, I'll just, as I said, I'm never gonna reveal who the provider is, but it's not necessarily who you think they are. Okay, this isn't. I know a lot of people will look at this. Oh, obviously this one is this one because of blah blah blah, and this one is this one, and this. No, 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 no. Do not guess, because I was surprised. A lot of them was surprised. Uh, uh, I was surprised about the results. So there's no guesswork here. And as a as another information I can tell you, I personally I have this provider, and I have, I think, this provider. And over the years, I had those two providers for many years, and they are switch on my setup. Like, as I said, since the inaccuracy, but well, the very small sample size, for me, both of them are switch. So do not take those numbers as this one is better than this one. That's not how this works. I did not see a correlation between age of NZBs and failure rate. Okay, so that is important. I'll say it again. I did not see a correlation between the age of NZBs that were input into the download softwares and the failure rate. Um, and that's it for now. And another test I did, as I said earlier, this is very important that people understand. This is not how you're supposed to use Usenet. This was just a setup I did for my test. I was curious, and I took the provider E, for example. If you look at this provider, and what I did, it's missing 6 NZB. So I'm missing 6 of the things I wanted. And what I did, I put this into an automated software that will either, for the 6 missing NZB, take, well, find a NZB that will be of the same quality, the same size, sorry, not quality, the same size, or higher. And when I did this, this number went up to 100%. So what I'm saying is, on the first view, you're missing, oh, this is missing, this is going to miss. But when you put it into automation softwares, which you should do, you put it into automation software, it reached the 65. So I wanted 65 content. I wanted 65 things, and I got 65 things with only provider E. I didn't add any other one. So this is very important that you understand this. Additional information, time to download. I did it back to back, really, a few days. Uh, the NZB selected were on public, well, paid indexer. I did not overthink this. I went, as I said, my goal was to get what I wanted, so I just went on public indexers, and they are paid, but I did not overthink this. I did not go into very niche uh, indexer just to cause trouble. I got what I needed. Um, as another weird information is, sometimes, very rarely, uh, I would requeue the NZB right away, and it made it succeed. For example, I test NZB, it failed. I'd retry it right away, and it succeed. This happened I think it happened once or twice over the entire thing. So I don't know, just I cannot explain it. I retried a failed NZB multiple times. As I said, when a provider, I did a test, for example, a provider did not get 5 NZB, I immediately relaunch those 5 NZBs just to make sure like there wasn't a connection error or just a glitch or something. About the speed, people will ask. 6 out of 8 providers saturated my 110 MB connection, and two had horrible speeds. I asked for a refund. Uh, but I Google it and it seems like I'm part of a very few. Honestly, this is more about like location and the distance and server and whatnot. So I would not overthink this, to be honest. If you're selecting a provider, you select your provider, you test the speed. If the speeds ain't right, ask for a refund and move on. This was instantly noticeable on my part, and the 6 out of 8 they had really good uh, quality of connections. And as I said, I Googled it, and I'm very part of the few. So I think honestly, I was just too far from the servers or the connection where was not right. So for many people, those two providers had good speed. So that's impossible. And that's it. That's all. That's all the results. Thanks you for watching the video. I hope this wasn't too long. And bye bye.